Hey everyone, Jessica Morrison here with Erin Myers. She is a marriage and family therapist with Counseling at the Greenhouse, and we're going to sit down today and learn how you and your moving transitions with your family can best serve your family members through this process and help kids respond as best as possible through this big change. So, Erin, thank you for your time, and I'm so excited to have you and just hear your wisdom on the subject.
Yeah. I um I feel like moving is one of those underrated stressors for kids. I think we would all recognize it. But they did research a couple years ago and looked at, okay, if kids do five or more moves in within the time of their childhood, you actually you're three times more likely to develop some mental health issue, which is actually higher than poverty is as a stressor, which
Wow.
wild to think about in terms of just kids and how they're dealing with the stresses of life. So it may be a small move and small in your mind, but kids, it is a big stressor for kids and something that we need to think about how to help our kids adapt to well and handle stress well. Again, stress itself is not the problem with kids, but what we do as parents certainly sets the tone for that.
That makes sense. How do you, does that number fluctuate based on age bracket? Are teens more likely to experience mental health, or is that unanimous all across each age group?
That particular study was they just looked across the age group, but they have also done also developmental studies on like, okay, they recognized over five, it's a bigger issue. I think under five, we're really just looking to our parents. We don't understand, but over five, we start to develop friendships with other kids, and those start to become a part of our social system. So at five, leaving that social system that we know starts to become more disruptive. Teens also is another age group so developmentally, what's happening is you're basing your identity, like you're beginning to base your identity on your friend group rather than just your family, right? And a lot of like deciding who I am as a person is based on this group of people. So essentially like if this group of people changes, then who I am changes. And so that's why you'll hear a lot more pushback from teens. Teens are more likely to step up and say like, no, I don't want to move. We should stay here. And really that's why like their big developmental task is kind of being interrupted. So for sure that period
Sure,
is.
sure. So, how do you see um, parents may elect to move because it's just the need for the house, or maybe they want to get into either a different school district, what have you, and sometimes that need is voluntarily, other times it's imposed upon them, meaning that there's a job opportunity that they just can't pass up. So when they sit down with their kids and introduce the idea of moving, what are the best ways that they can go about that? And things to keep in mind maybe as they structure that conversation.
No. Um, it's cliche, but it works really well here. Honesty is the best policy. Kids find stability in structure, and a lot of that structure is the information that you're giving them. That's a form of structure to say, hey, I'm letting you know what's going on. So again, developmentally at the appropriate age that your child is at and what they can understand, just being honest and saying, hey, um, letting them know as early as you can that this is happening. We're not gonna wait until the night before. I mean, they would have guessed by that point, but like letting them know as early on, letting them be engaged in the discussions or the conversation. So like, hey, if the decision is made, it might look like, hey, we're going to move this house. How do you, and leaving lots of space for how they feel about it, leaving lots of space for their questions. Um, but yeah, ultimately, you just want to give them as much information as possible, and then you are the buffer for and the holder for all of their reactions in that time. Like all the questions, all the emotions, and just leave the floor open for them to experience all those things. Because the chances that you've probably experienced those things too, if you're already at the spot that you've had some time to think about it, you've probably had some time to be upset, disappointed, excited, and you're telling them for the first time, and you get the privilege of holding their first emotions in that moment. So hold them carefully.
So many visuals coming into mind.
Yeah.
So is there a point where you feel like it's maybe either inappropriate or like I'll have clients kind of look to me sometimes as an agent, like, do we introduce this now, like when we're looking versus maybe waiting until we're under contract or through a certain phase, because then it's more of a done deal. And depending on the age group or situation, sometimes they do have to bring children along with them. And that can be really hard because they want to get excited about a bedroom, but that might not actually be the house that they make an offer on. And so, do you feel like there's a boundary of where possible, it is best for the child to introduce this big change, this big idea? And is it possible to introduce the subject too early because of all of the ironically moving components that can happen as a family decides where they're going to live and sometimes how long that takes to make that happen?
That's a really great question. I am, I err on the side of more information rather than less information. Okay. And so, an example of having that conversation with a younger kid, like 5 or 6, might be something like, we're going to look at some other houses today. Um, did you know that other people move? Like, did you know that sometimes people change houses? Well, we're going to look and see if there's another house that we might like a lot. That doesn't mean that we'll buy it. We're just going to look around at some other houses that we could live in. What would you like about maybe living here? What would
Mm.
you be sad about leaving your house? Okay. And we're not buying it yet. We're just looking around and seeing, these are some other houses that are for sale right now. For an older kid, obviously that conversation might be a little bit more straightforward. Like, hey, this house isn't meeting our needs. There's 4 of you and only 2 bedrooms. Like, we feel like we're outgrowing it. We're looking to see if that might be an option. We haven't set any plans right now, but I wonder what you would maybe look for in a second house. And again, asking their input in both scenarios, right?
Mm.
Asking for their input of like, okay, at this point of the process, this is where we're at, and what do you think about that? Or how, like, what kind of input would you have in that scenario?
That makes sense. So, shifting gears a little bit, um, let's say we get through the transaction, the property closes, um, and respectfully, even before then, during this process, you've involved them in the process. What should parents look for in behavioral, emotion, and just other buckets that I might not know to ask about in these types of responses to it? What should parents anticipate, maybe in growth development, setbacks, or outbursts, and how can they best support that while gently holding those emotions as best they can?
Mhm. I think even asking the question and that being something that you're thinking about as a parent is as a first step really helpful. You're going to see the world through a different frame. Um, Whereas normally you might see your kid's behavior as irritating or, they're just having a really hard day. Even just to be able to look through the lens and say, okay, we're moving right now. Everything is just going to fall into that bucket. Okay. We're going to assume that this is stress. I'm not going to assume my child wants to make my life miserable. I'm not going to assume that they're a bad kid. I'm going to assume that this is going to be related to the stress of moving. And I think that's a helpful framework to just walk into the scenario with. Um, there's lots of sources for that stress, right? And one of the biggest sources is not even just the relocation, although that's huge. It can be that our kids are picking up on our stress,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kids are really aware and they are very good temperature readers of how we're doing. So as you are, like last minute phone calls to realtors and like trying to get the last thing fixed and wait, no, I have to get this email out right now, right? Our kids are picking up on that level of stress and that's just going to raise their own internal temperature. Um, so even, yeah, before you close, before they're thinking about like, oh man, I have to fit all my toys in one box and I might have to get rid of my bed, like they're reading the room. So reading the room could look like, um, like sleep disturbances, appetite changes. It can look like irritability. It can look like a lot of times our like younger kids will portray stress as body. So it can look like upset tummies. I don't feel good. My head hurts. I don't, yeah, like those kind of things, right? Similar to, it's been making me laugh. Um, my, I've had clients come back after the summer and be like, oh yeah, like my child hasn't, their stomach hasn't hurt all summer. I'm like, well, yeah, because you start school in a week. Like, get ready for it to come back, right? Okay. Our kids don't always have the language for emotions. And again, that's something that we can work on and teach them. But our kids don't always naturally communicate in that emotional language, but they do understand the way that their body communicates. Okay. So be on the lookout for that too, of those mysterious ailments that pop up. And of course, like be willing to assume that they are like they're real and they're being experienced too, but anxiety can have that effect on the body. Um, so so yeah, that's some of the things you can look for. Again, just like any signs of depression or anxiety, so social withdrawal, not wanting to hang out with their friends would be another sign. And of course, if any of those signs get too big, you can always, I mean, first that's a sign to support right there. But then, of course, if that continues like long past the move, then that would be a signal to reach out to a professional and get them some help.
So that's actually a good question is what is the appropriate time frame of like too long? Is that 2 weeks? Is it 6 months? Because we all respond differently to change. Sometimes we don't realize how we feel about something until 2 weeks later, or um, emotions can be a funny thing, and especially in a new environment where you're trying to read and respond to so many different new stimuli. Even just as an adult compared to a child who doesn't always know what to say. They might emotionally have more power to act on an emotion just outright. And sometimes that's easier because it's like, okay, you're angry. But at the same time, um, does that response um, vary per age group? Meaning a teen could even be responding 6 months to a year, even after that move has taken place, or because I think that's a hard thing for a parent to maybe know when to involve outside support or to structure that conversation because it's always tricky, I think, to separate um, a child's behavior and, oh, they're just three, or this is a personality and a habit that if we don't correct is going to become a problem. So, does that question make sense?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is the question of like, how do I know when my support is enough for the signs of distress that they're showing versus like, okay, there's some signs that maybe we can find you some more support. Um, so there's also different levels of stressors here. So this is going to look different for a child who moves down the street, still goes to the same church, still has the same friends, still goes to the same school. It's going to look very different for a child that maybe moves cross-culturally or is taken away from a significant portion of their support group. So, um, I can tell you, so for the child, we're going to start with the child who moves like a large move. Let's say cross country, cross culturally, cross like a significant portion is changing. Um, there's an ebb to that, okay? There's like a honeymoon phase for about the first month or two. That's like, okay, this isn't terrible. There's some good things, there's some fun things, and you expect instead of it, most parents will walk in being like, "Oh, okay, the move went pretty well. Like not a lot of bad things happened. It'll get better from here." It doesn't get better from there, okay? There's a hill coming. Okay. So then it sets in like this is where I'm living. These are the hard parts of what's going on. Okay. So that's gonna peak around three months is usually like when they graph that out, it's usually like 3 to 4 months is when that peaks. And then you want to see it start coming down the other side. So for those big changes, I would say, okay, um, it's never bad to have extra support, but I'd be looking at that hump and saying, okay, if it's not starting to come down by about 3, 4 months, um, like starting to come down the other side a little bit, then I would like start to think about asking to step in. For a smaller move, so between the like 4 to 6 month period is where I would say, okay, if the symptoms haven't slowed at all, then would be a good time to step in and get support. You might move that up a little bit for a smaller transition. Like if a child is still struggling a lot by month 3 and you've only, moved down the street, that might be a time to step in. But in general, that's kind of when you think about the change of adjustment to a new place, that's kind of the arc. And it doesn't fully come down until about 6 months. So you like kids, and this is the arc for adults too. So like kids and adults, you think that you'll be settled by month 3. Like, no, you're actually in the worst of it by month 3, and you don't come down until about month 6.
Oh man, I would love to watch various parents like respond to that. And I mean, just it's fun to think about.
Yeah.
Like timelines, stressors, all of these different components. It makes a lot of sense, but I think it is certainly easy to dismiss because I think there's a good friend of mine and a mentor likes to say, don't should all over yourself. Um, we feel like we should be at a certain place or, oh, this shouldn't be this hard, what have you. And I think it's really interesting that um, the timeline is how you've outlined it, even for adults. What are some ways that you, of course, had it on mute? Um, so, in response to just kind of taking all of this in the limited time that we have left, how do you feel? Like, what are some tips that you want to leave parents with? Um, I'm sorry if you can't hear it. There's a background noise with my coffee machine shutting off. Uh, what are some tips that you want to leave parents with to be set up for success in these last like 9 minutes that we have?
Yeah. Um, so I I would encourage parents that you are your kid's stability, okay? Your house is going to change. Other people are going to come in and out of their lives. Schools are going to change, right? Friends are going to change. All those things are going to change. But really leaning into that attachment of like you are your kid's safe place and you have the power to be their biggest asset in this move. I know that's really hard to think about adding and another thing in your to-do list, especially in the business of packing and moving and changing all the things. But really, this is one thing that as a therapist, I would urge you, please don't farm this responsibility out. Okay? Like you can pay movers, you can do other things, you can pay people to pack up your house. Like you cannot pay someone to be the emotional regulation for your kid. Like you've been there all along, okay? So give yourself extra time and space for this responsibility. Okay. And in that responsibility, I would say look for like 3 ways to create that safety and the stability with them. Okay. You're going to want to create some safe rhythms. You're going to create some safe things and some safe people. Okay. So starting with safe rhythms, this means that the things that you do before the move, your kid is going to be able to count on some of those things staying consistent after the move. If you have a bedtime routine, if you do it this way, do it that same way, okay? Other rhythms of connection could be like dinner times and meal times as a family. Um, Getting up early in the morning and having special mommy time, reading the Bible with mommy, or we watch a show, okay? And these take some intentionality in the chaos of moving. They can often get forgotten and viewed as unimportant. And I would advise you to think like, no, this is the most important thing I can be doing. Okay, I understand that a lot of them are going to change, but maybe like in your process of moving in your list, sit down and list out 6 rhythms that you think can stay the same, that your kid can count on. And then in your conversation with your kid, let them know that you're committed to keeping these rhythms the same. Like, okay, and the conversation will look like, right? Like, okay, moving week will be crazy. Our stuff is going to be packed up, but you and me, we'll still have breakfast together. We'll still sit down at 8 o'clock and have our breakfast. Okay, so these are the times that they know that they can count on you. You're going to create safe things. Okay, you know, their couch probably will get left behind on the move, right? Or it like things change. So what things can you put in their environment and their surrounding that they can count on? Okay. Um, this would look like making sure to unpack their room first at the new house. Um, and so they have their space set up that they can count on their stuff. And again, giving agency in that process, right? Like, what paint color do you want to do? How do you want to decorate? Like, how can we make this the same? Like, how can we make this your place? Um, Also, packing a like night of move bag for all of your kids. So for each of your kids, putting in, um, their favorite stuffed animal, their favorite blanket, the pillow they can't sleep without. Like have that all in one spot. The toothbrush, the toothpaste, the jammies. Like sure, the functional stuff too, but it may be small, but having those regular things that provide stability and connection, like having those things ready to go can be really important and make the difference between a meltdown at the time and them feeling like comforted and like they know what's happening. Another thing that I think people don't really think about as a comfort item is food. Okay. Our body has been wired to view, honestly, salts, sugars, and fats as comfort items. Okay. So you have a unique ability in a time that they may not need this comfort every day, but it is a unique time where you can provide comfort by snacks that they like, right? Having, like in an overwhelming day, maybe it is that give them the candy or the chips or whatever that, like their brain is going to look for that comfort food. And as much as there's taboos right now in our society or like that pushback or that like want to withdraw from giving our kids all those like bad foods, I would I would think about using food as an opportunity to create comfort. Okay. So yeah, what that could look like is packing in their bag a handful, like 5 or 6 of those comforting snacks that they have access to in the move day. And then lastly, like safe people. So part of this is, okay, you're going to be their safe person, right? By creating those rituals of connection. And another part of it could be giving them access to people that they may or may not have. So FaceTiming people after they've moved who they can't necessarily see. Getting them connected with new friends, going over to meet neighbor kids so they have people to connect with. Um, but friendships and people are obviously one of the biggest resources that we can give our kid of stability and connection in a time of instability. So leaning into that.
That's wonderful. And I know that our audience is going to really appreciate that. And um, I think so many of these are good tips. And I think that if anything, like especially on the food subject, food can be such a tricky thing to figure out on move day or around move day because it's, like you don't want to be emptying the fridge more than you can, like help it. And it's a very easy thing to overlook. And I feel like parents will naturally criticize themselves like, oh, I gave my kid pizza today or whatever. And depending on the priorities, that can feel like, oh, I'm a bad parent or whatever. And I think, um,
I might
like, give
reframe
yourself,
that sentence.
yeah,
So
sure,
even as a mom myself, right, I have an opportunity to reframe that sentence and be like, man, I chose to lean into my child's need for comfort with a preferred,
right.
like, I wasn't being a bad mom by not meeting their dietary needs. I was being a good mom by leading into what they knew their body needed at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was getting to was that give yourself some grace and instead look at it as that opportunity to connect and have something fun together. Because it is a big change. So I think the one thing that I don't want to leave people without is how do you support a child who is highly withdrawn, who isn't communicating a lot? Maybe they're an introvert. They've done all of these steps. Um, how do they improve that communication? Because if they aren't verbalizing anything, it's very difficult to know how to support.
Right. So one of the best tools in transitions period is social stories. Okay. And they really So social stories can be anything like you creating a book for your kid of like this is what's going to happen, or it can be looking at picture books or books about that topic. Or it can be watching movies, right? Like, so a good example for a social story of moving would be watching Inside Out with your preteen or teen, right? Like she goes through the moving. Um, and using these opportunities as you're teaching your kid, okay, like what to expect. This is what's going to happen. But you're also modeling, like, these might be some feelings that you're feeling. These might be some things that you're experiencing. And even if your kid doesn't know how to label that for themselves, then when they come up against it, they're going to be like, oh, right? Like, that's what happened in that book. That must be what I'm feeling and thinking. And so you're giving your child language for what's going on in them. And you're also giving yourself a springboard for asking the questions and conversations of, like, oh, the Berenstain Bears, Sissy felt this way when they moved. Like, I wonder if you felt like that. So some great books around, there's so many great picture books around moving. I know I mentioned the Berenstain Bears Move Day is one of them. I really like, Florette is another really great one. Goodbye House, the Bad Goodbye, Good Goodbye, or Bad Guy, Goodbye. Ugh, I can't say that. That's another great one. Um, Sarah Elizabeth um, Boreham, Sarah Elizabeth. Anyway, she put out a guide. It's called the Essential Moving Guided Journal for Preteens. That's another really great social story where kids are making their own, um, and it gives you them the chance to do that self-reflection, but also for you to have that conversation. Um, and again, using those social stories as a chance to open up your child's world and give them, because sometimes kids are reserved just because they don't know how to express, they don't know how to label what they're feeling, they don't know how to express it. So the more that you set yourself up with a springboard for those conversations, the more insight you're going to have. Okay, is this is this just anxiety, or is this becoming something bigger that you think that you really need to seek professional help?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Erin, again for your time. I know that our parents especially are going to really appreciate this. What's the best way either to connect with you, or if they feel that they do need to involve, or just want to proactively invite a counselor into this conversation to support them? What do you suggest, either locally here in Indianapolis or on an interstate basis?
Yeah, so you can get a hold of me by going through either our website for counseling at the Greenhouse Indy. We're located 38th and Central, near the fairgrounds near Butler. And there's lots of fantastic kid therapists there. So either you can email me or reach out through our website. My email is erin@greenhouseindy.com. Either that, or you can look and see some of our other therapists available at the website. You can look and book a free 15-minute consult with any one of our therapists there. If you just have more questions and say, hey, like, should we come in? They'd be able to look more closely at your situation and give you some resources.
Okay, great. Do you have an organization that you recommend for family moving out of state? Because I feel like that's kind of the hard part is where do they look or how do they find that type of referral?
So I actually specialize in helping families transition internationally. So I do a good bit of that work. I would say if anyone is looking to move internationally, let me know 5, 6 months in advance that move, and I'll help your family work and prep for that. Um, but if you're already moving, then it'll be a licensure issue. So just get on Psychology Today and look for someone who specializes in that area in the state that you're currently in, because everyone's licensed by state. So
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Erin. And if you all have questions, certainly feel free to comment below on this video or reach out to Erin directly at the information provided. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Jess.